Hi everyone. So if you followed the instructions up to this point, you should have something in processing that looks like this. You should have copied the code from the web browser into processing, and so your processing window should look like this now. You should have the setup function, and this is a function that we're going to be writing today. We're going to be changing some of what is going on in it. We're also going to write another function later called draw. These are both functions that processing provides to some extent, so it will call setup whenever the program starts. So if you go ahead and hit the play button in the upper left hand corner here, you can see what happens when you press play. It should launch a window that is of a certain size and has a black background. So we'll get to change those things in a few minutes. First, I wanted to talk about what's going on in this code. So first you'll notice there's this word void before setup. Don't worry too much about this for now. Void is just the return type of the function. It means that setup does not pass anything back to the code that called it. So when processing calls setup, it's not expecting us to send anything back to processing. Next we have the word setup. That's the name of the function. So processing knows to look for the name setup in our code to call it when the program starts. We'll try to name our functions something that's descriptive of what they do whenever we write a function that's not specific, that doesn't specifically have to be named something. In this case, it has to be named exactly setup, or processing will throw an error. So let's try changing it. And if we run it, then we're not going to get the same window. So we need to have it spelled exactly setup so that processing knows what to do. Next, we have two parentheses. An open parenthesis, which is the one on the left here, and a closed parenthesis, which is the one on the right. It's important whenever we have one open parenthesis that we always have a closed parenthesis. As I mentioned last class, computers are very specific about how we tell them to do things, and one of the things that they're very specific about is whenever we have these parentheses or braces, they always have to be matched. So if we have an open one, we always have to have a closed one. That's a common error to look out for while you're writing code today. If your code isn't working when you press play, check and see if you have parentheses matching. So every time that you have an open one, you need to have a closed one. Next, you'll see a brace. This denotes that we're starting the body of the function. So any code between the open brace and the closed brace is what is going to get executed when we run setup. Again, if we have an open brace, we always have to have a closed brace too. So another error to look for is if you have an opening brace and you don't have a closing brace. Check and see if you don't have those if your code isn't running. Next, we have two lines of code. We call these statements. So these statements are function calls to functions that processing provides for us. So the size function just opens a window of a certain size. The first parameter is the width of the window, and the second parameter is the height of the window. At the end of the line, you'll see that we have this semicolon. Again, this is another thing that computers are very specific about. Every statement that we write has to be finished with a semicolon. So if you're having trouble starting your program, look for a missing semicolon, and that might be the problem. Next, we have a call to background. That sets the background color of the window. And it takes a number. This number can be between 0 and anything. So 0 is black. If we go to 255, that's going to be a white window. If we do some number that's really big, it's going to be a random color. In this case, I got a light blue shade with that number. So you can play around with this and see what colors you can come up with.